Good evening, everybody. Yeah. So the video was about Sravasti Abbey. That's the monastery where I live in the U.S. So I thought you might be interested in seeing how Dharma is practiced in another country and how, the challenges we face in bringing Dharma to a country that isn't Buddhist at all. In some ways it's similar to the challenges you face, because you're translating Buddhism into Bahasa, and we're translating it into English. Here in Indonesia, though, you have such a large Buddhist community, and that has existed for, hundreds of years, so it's quite wonderful. You have that whole history and support. In the U.S., we're bringing Buddhism into a country that has no idea what it is. Yeah. So it's a very interesting experience. I walk down the street and people kind of, who are you? They've never seen a monk or a nun before. Although now, since the Dalai Lama won the Nobel Peace Prize and is, so well known, sometimes people will come up to me and say, "Oh, do you know the Dalai Lama?" So, yeah. Okay. But you're all invited to come and visit. As the video said, we have many programs where guests can come, and we also open the monastery for the guests who want to come when we don't have a program, because some people like to come and just join in our regular daily schedule and offer service and take part in the schedule of meditation and teachings and so on. So you're all very welcome to come. Please do. If you've never seen snow before, this can be your first time if you come in the winter. The other seasons are the weather's quite different. We have 4 quite distinct seasons. So you get a big variety there. Okay. So we'll start our talk for this evening. Again, as yesterday, I'll start out chanting the prayer of refuge and bodhicitta. And so while I chant this, please imagine in the space in front of you the Buddha surrounded by all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and think of yourself surrounded by all living beings, and you're leading all living beings in turning for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and in generating a motivation of love and compassion and altruism for listening to the teachings. Okay? And so especially when we're generating our motivation, we want to place what we're about to do very squarely within the context of being of benefit to all living beings, and in particular by benefiting them through progressing ourselves on the path to full awakening. So think about that as I chant the verse. Okay. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Then I'll say the 4 immeasurables, or the 4 Brahmaviharas. And so again, think about the meaning as I say them. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. And then let's turn our attention to the breath, breathing normally and naturally, and placing our attention either at the upper lip and the nostrils, watching the sensation of the breath as it flows past there. Or we can place our attention on our abdomen and watch the rise and fall of our abdomen. But place your attention on one of those 2 points and keep it there. And just observe what's happening as you inhale and exhale. If your mind gets distracted by a sound or a thought or something else, just notice that, but bring your attention back home to the breath. So your breath is like home, and you just keep coming home to your breath. And by keeping your attention on one object, in this case the breath, then the mind will become clear and calm. So let's have a few minutes of silence to do this. Then slowly open your eyes and come out of your meditation. Okay. So did you think about what we talked about last night? Yeah, considering the disadvantages of anger and the effect it has on us right now in our lives, as well as the way anger affects our spiritual path. Because through anger we create so much negative karma, which then adversely affects our rebirth, and the karma from anger, as well as the seed of anger itself, obscures our mind and prevents us from gaining Dharma realizations. There's some beeping going on. What is beeping? Maybe we just have to practice patience with the beeping. Okay, so like I was saying last night, when we really see from our own experience the disadvantages of the anger, then we have a very strong motivation to do something about it. Because we see the problems it creates in our life, and we see how it makes us unhappy, makes others unhappy, and, really interferes with our spiritual practice. You can see, because you never heard of an angry Buddha, did you? Yeah. So anger is definitely something we have to eliminate on the path to awakening. So, I told you yesterday that today I would talk a little bit more about the antidotes to anger, and so the ways to think, and in order to transform our mind when anger is arising, or after anger has arisen, and we want to calm our mind again. Okay? Because we certainly don't want to stockpile our anger and build on our anger and collect our anger, because that becomes a big burden on us. Okay? So it's very important to release the anger and forgive. So otherwise, you know how you see old people who are bent over? I think some of it is not only because their bones are weaker, but, you know, if you don't process what happens in your life and clear up those negative emotions, then as you age, you get bent over with the weight of the anger and the negative emotions. And that's really a drag. And I think we've all probably met some old people who are very bitter about life. You met old people like that? Very bitter, very resentful, you know, they may have had a very good life in terms of comfort and wealth and so on, but their mind is so dreadfully unhappy because they're holding on to the anger and resentment. So that's why it's so important to release it. We don't want to grow old in that kind of way. Okay, so yesterday I started talking about what to do about criticism. Yeah, I don't know about you, but criticism is one of my most unfavorite things. Okay, at least to receive criticism is unfavorite. Give criticism, I'm pretty good at that one. Okay, but receive criticism I don't like at all. Okay, you know, and when I look, well, why don't we like criticism? Yeah, why don't we like it? And I think often it's because we think that what other people say about us is true. But is that the case? Is whatever other people think or say about us necessarily true? Is it? You know, we need to think about this. Have you ever been in this situation where people have told you two completely contradictory things about yourself, and then which one is true? If what other people say is right, then which one am I? So I think that part of our problem, you know, why we get angry is when we receive criticism, we think that it's true. And why do we think that it's true? Because we've never developed the ability to look inside and evaluate our own actions. Instead, we've always looked outside for other people to tell us who we are. But we really need to look inside and use the Buddha's teachings to examine our own actions, our attitudes, and evaluate them for ourselves with our own intelligence, through our own wisdom. Okay? Because, as I mentioned briefly yesterday, the real value of any action we do is our motivation. It's not what other people think about the action. It's our motivation, our intention, why we did the action. That's what determines the value. But when we are out of touch with ourselves and our own intentions, then we basically act on automatic. And then if other people criticize, then we just say, oh, what they say must be true. And then we either get mad at them for pointing it out, because nobody should point out my faults. Should they? You know? I mean, everybody has faults. I have faults. If I have faults, you should just cultivate patience. Right? Yeah? You don't need to point out my faults. Yeah, so I get angry because, you know, you're so rude and discourteous for pointing out my faults. Or I get angry at myself because I think what the other person says is true. And then I say, oh, look, I'm such a failure. Look what I've done. I can't do anything right. We get depressed. Okay. But both of those things are really inaccurate, because when we think about it, just because somebody says something, it doesn't mean it's true. People say all sorts of things, don't they? And I had the experience once of people telling me two very opposite things about myself within a half an hour. And if I were to believe what each person said, I would get very confused because I wouldn't know who I was. Okay? And so here's the situation that happened. I was living in the monastery. So one nun comes and says to me, oh, you keep your precepts so strictly, so tightly. There's no space in your mind. You're so inflexible. You're just so strict about the way you keep your precepts. And she was very disapproving, and then a half an hour later, another nun came and said, you are so loose the way you keep your precepts. You don't have any discipline at all. You just do whatever. Okay? So two totally different, opinions about how I keep my precepts. Now, if I believe what everybody says is true, I don't know who I am anymore. Because one person says I'm too strict, one person says I'm too loose. Okay? So in that situation, I really had to stop, and then I had to look inside and say, well, what do I think? Am I too strict? Am I too loose? I had to do the evaluation myself. And what's my motivation? What's going on inside of me? Okay? So this, I think, is a very important thing. And if we are in touch with our own feelings and motivations, then we aren't so influenced by what other people say or think about us. We listen, but we listen with intelligence and wisdom, and we evaluate what they say. So like I was saying yesterday, one antidote for criticism is to ask ourselves, is what the other person says true? So we're going to evaluate it. Yeah? Is what they say true? Somebody comes and says, you're so disorganized. Okay? So then we ask ourselves, well, is it true? Am I disorganized? Well, take a look at your desk. Yeah. Take a look at your list of activities, or maybe you don't have a list. Okay. But we have to evaluate it ourselves. Now, if somebody said you're disorganized, and we look inside and we say, oh boy, I really am. My desk is a mess. I forget things. A lot of things, fall through the cracks and don't get done because I am disorganized. Then, instead of getting mad at the person for saying it, we have to say thank you. You're right. You pointed out one of my weak areas, and I need to improve because I know when I'm disorganized that it makes life difficult for other people, and I really don't want to be the source of other people's problems. So thank you for pointing that out to me. Okay? If it's true, there's no reason to get mad. It's like if somebody says to me, you have a nose on your face. What am I going to do? Say, what are you talking about? I don't have a nose. When you have a nose that's big like mine, it's very clear you have one. What's the use of denying it? And what's the use of getting mad? It's there. Everybody sees it. If I have a fault, everybody sees it. What's the value of trying to pretend I don't have it when everybody knows it? Except maybe me. Okay? So no reason to get mad if what somebody says is true. Okay? On the other hand, if what they say is not true, if they say, oh, you're so disorganized, and you look, and your desk is very neat, and you do manage to succeed in turning things in on time and being responsible for the things that you have to do, and you know that you're organized, then there's no reason to get mad because what the other person says isn't true. That would be like them saying you have horns on your head. Horns. Yeah, horns. So you check, no horns. That person doesn't have the correct information. So no reason to get mad because what they're saying is not true. Okay? So you see, either way, when we receive criticism, there's no reason to get angry about it. Yeah? If somebody accuses us of something we didn't do, then we have to give them the correct information so that they'll understand the situation. Okay? Yeah. So that's one way to prevent getting angry or to calm ourselves down after we've received criticism. Yeah. So you have to remember this technique. It sounds nice now when we're sitting in the meditation hall and nobody's criticizing us. Yeah. But as soon as you get in the car, and your husband and wife says, "Oh, she talked about being disorganized," maybe she was talking about you. Then all of a sudden, that's when you have to remember it, okay, and ask yourself, is it true or not true? Okay. There's another antidote for criticism that I find works very well when I use it, okay? Because in Buddhism we say that whatever we experience is due to karma. And karma simply means action, okay? So our actions of body, speech, and mind, what we do, what we say, what we think and feel, okay? So we're always experiencing the right results of our own action because things operate. We can see the world operates depending on causes, and causes produce effects, okay? Things don't happen just randomly. So when we get criticized, it is the ripening of a karma, okay, the ripening of an action we've done. And what has that action been? Well, probably it's been criticizing other people. Okay. So anybody here who's never criticized somebody else? Yeah. Now, when you don't raise your hands, I know you're telling the truth. Yeah, because we've all criticized other people, haven't we? Yeah. Not just once or twice, but probably fairly regularly. Yeah. I know for myself, when I look at my own behavior, I criticize people on a daily basis. It's like taking vitamins, except it's not just once a day, it's, 10 times a day I criticize somebody, okay? So if I ask myself, when somebody criticizes me, if I say, okay, this is a result of me criticizing other people, and then I look at how much I criticize other people versus how much I get criticized. Okay? I criticize other people on a daily basis, like I said, numerous times a day. But do I get criticized every day? No. I don't get criticized every day. Just occasionally. So if I'm looking at, my criticism as a result of my own action, I'm kind of getting off easy, aren't I? I criticize people several times a day. I get criticized once in a while. Yeah. So I shouldn't really complain, should I? Because if I got criticized as much as I criticize other people, then it would be something. Then I have to ask myself, well, if I don't like getting criticized, maybe I should stop creating the cause for criticism, which means I should stop criticizing other people. What do you think about that one? Are you ready to stop criticizing other people? Who's she talking to? not me. I'm not ready to start criticizing other people, because my criticism is correct. That person really is idiotic or stupid. But then, if we have that attitude towards other people, is it any wonder that we get criticized? When we use our speech to stir up disharmony and to ruin other people's reputation and to hurt their feelings, is it any wonder that other people criticize us? I mean, think about it. It's no wonder at all. Yeah, even if we don't believe in karma, it's no wonder at all. Everybody knows if you use your speech in a harmful way, it comes right back. Yeah? So it's really like throwing out a boomerang and boing, it hits us. So there's nobody else to blame or complain to. What we have to do is really become much more mindful of our speech. And when I say mindful of our speech, I don't mean just being aware of what we're saying. Some people think mindfulness is just bare attention and noting what you're doing. In which case, oh, I'm opening my mouth and trashing somebody. Oh, I'm criticizing somebody. I'm very mindful. Oh, yeah, right? I'm fully aware I'm criticizing somebody. I'm hurting somebody's feelings. I'm insulting them. I'm ridiculing them. Yeah. I'm perfectly mindful of that. Is that the meaning of mindfulness? Do you think the Buddha taught a whole sutra on mindfulness so that we could do that? I don't think so. Okay. So mindfulness means, in this case, being mindful of what proper speech is. Holding in mind our precepts, especially about how we're going to speak to and about other people. And if we hold those in mind, if we're mindful of, the precepts about speech, then our speech goes in a good direction. When we're not mindful of what good speech is, then we just say whatever comes to our mind. And we often wind up in a mess afterwards. Okay? So we want to really pay attention in any kind of speech that is telling lies, okay, that is creating disharmony with other people, making people quarrel, turning people against each other. Any kind of speech that is rude, insulting, critical, belittling of others, and any kind of speech that is just idle talk. Those are what we want to abandon. And our speech is so important. Yeah? I remember in my country, right before the U.S. invaded Iraq, there was all this talk of there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And everybody's going, oh, weapons of mass destruction, this is terrible. Well, as it turned out, there weren't weapons of mass destruction. But it made me think that sometimes our mouth can be a weapon of mass destruction. Yeah. Think of what you say to people sometimes. I touched on this last night. Yeah. I mean, we can hurt people so badly just through how we move. This one little space in our body. Okay? We can really hurt people's feelings very badly. We can create fights and arguments and discord. We can create war by how we use our mouth, how we speak. Yeah? So it's very, very important. Yeah? so that our speech does not become a weapon of mass destruction. But let's use our speech to make it something that creates peace in the world. Okay? And if we do, then we won't have to worry so much about being criticized, because we won't be creating the cause, the karma, for the criticism. Okay? Same thing about talking about other people behind their back. Criticism is what we say to their face. Talking about them behind their back is what we say when they're not there. So sometimes in an office situation, you know, you kind of gang up with your friends and you scapegoat somebody else, make them the black sheep. You know, oh, look what this person did, look what this person, oh, that person always doing that. You know, then everybody becomes friends, and the basis of the friendship is because they all talk badly about one person. Do you want your friendships to be based on trashing somebody else? That's not a very good reason to bond with other people, because you all gossip about, you know, another person. Okay? But what happens, you know, when we trash somebody else? You know? Then we're creating the whole atmosphere in our workplace for people to divide into different parties, yeah, and different groups that are always criticizing each other. And so one time or another, our group's going to get criticized, and we'll probably personally get criticized, because we're creating that ambience in the workplace. Yeah. It reminds me of when I was, I must have been maybe 11 years old. I was in 6th grade, and 11-year-old girls are very cliquey, you know, and we always form our little groups, and like, you know, like this. So I was in a group with 6 other girls, and I decided when I was 11 years old that I was a little bit arrogant and proud, that I was going to get one girl kicked out of our group. Okay. So I talked to all the other girls and said, oh, this Rosie is, you know, and I got them all to agree to kick Rosie out of the group. So we kicked Rosie out of the group, and the next week they kicked me out of the group. Yeah, there it is, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, what you give out comes right back. Yeah. I'm still waiting for Rosie to show up at one of my Dharma talks so I can apologize to her. Because I was so mean. Okay, so that's a little bit about criticism. Now, what about one of the cohorts of criticism is blame. Okay? And we often have this idea that when there's a problem, somebody has to be blamed, right? And this works on an individual basis. When there's a problem, we've got to blame somebody. It works on a group basis when different groups are working together. If things don't turn out the way people want, got to blame somebody. And politics functions on this too, you know? And I mean, my country is just horrible. The Republicans blame the Democrats blame the Republicans, and they're so busy bickering that nobody works for the good of the people. Yeah? So it's a real problem in my country now. But, so we see this whole thing about wanting to blame, you know. I'm innocent, everything is their fault. Yeah. Now, is that really so? When there's a problem, is it the fault of one person? Yeah. When you're in a relationship with somebody and there's some bumps in the relationship, is it the fault of one person? Oh, you're all looking so innocent. Yeah. Oh, I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. But when we think about it, if a relationship is of two people, don't both people have some responsibility? Okay? Now, in my mind, responsibility and fault are two different things. Okay? Does the word responsibility sound different to you than the word fault? Yeah, does it sound, is the meaning different to you? To be responsible rather than to be at fault. Okay? Because the way I look at it is responsible is a much more neutral word. Yeah. If I have difficulties with somebody, I am partially responsible for the difficulties. That doesn't mean I'm at fault, and it doesn't mean I'm to blame. And so the same thing with the other person. If we're having problems, they have some responsibility. But it doesn't mean that they're at fault, and it doesn't mean I have the right to blame them. Because to me, the word blame means that we're dumping all the negativity on one side and saying that we have no responsibility. But things are not like that, are they? Yeah. The Buddha taught us, and we see, that things arise due to multiple factors and multiple conditions. So it's not that one person is responsible. Yeah. There's interrelationship, there's dynamic going on. Yeah. And we have to own our responsibility and distinguish what we're responsible for from what the other person's responsible for. But it doesn't mean that we have to blame ourselves, and it doesn't mean we have to blame others. Okay, are you getting what I mean? Is this making some sense to you? Because blame is so negative. It's, you're bad, you're this, you're that. And blaming ourselves, blaming others, doesn't help the situation, because we get into such a negative frame of mind that we can't see things clearly. Whereas when there's a problem, if we just sit and say, what is my share of this? Yeah, what did I bring to this relationship? And the other person does the same thing. Yeah. Then, if we see what we contributed, we can work at improving it and stopping, what we're responsible for. But if all we do is blame somebody for a problem, then we're giving up any power to resolve it. Because if it's totally 100% the other person's fault, then there's nothing I can do to change it. Yeah? Understanding? We so often like to blame somebody else and make ourselves a victim of their actions. But when we do that, we're giving up our own power to change the situation. Because if we think it's all somebody else's fault, then we're telling ourselves there's nothing I can do. And the only way it's going to change is if the other person changes. But can we make the other person change? Yeah. We've been trying our whole life to make other people change. How successful have we been? Yeah. Can you make other people change? Not very easy. The only person we can make change is this one, ourself. But when we blame the other person, then we aren't taking any responsibility, which means we don't have anything we can do to change, to make the situation better. Okay? So while sometimes making ourselves into a victim can be very comfortable for our ego, ego gets a lot of mileage out of being a victim. Really, it gets a lot of mileage. Oh, these people treated me wrongly. They did this, they did that. I'm innocent. It's all their fault. You should sympathize with me. I should get special privileges because they treated me wrong. I'm entitled to this and that. We go on this whole big thing. Yeah. But we're essentially making ourselves into victims and making ourselves powerless by blaming somebody else. Because then we don't see anything we can do. We'd have to just sit there and complain until somebody else changes. Yeah? How many of you spend a lot of time complaining? Okay. A few of you are honest. I guess all the rest of you are little angels. Yeah, you don't complain. You just listen to the rest of us who complain. But we can spend a lot of our life complaining, can't we? We can spend a whole lot of time. Oh, we always say, I'm so busy, I don't have any time in my life. But we always have time to complain. Always. Yeah? And we don't just complain once, we complain 2 times, 3 times. We call our friends, we complain about the same thing over and over and over until our friend is just so sick of talking to us that they don't want to answer the phone. We all have friends like that, right? But are we sometimes that kind of friend to somebody else? Oh, no, we don't do that. We don't. It's them. Yeah. Oh, this one always causing me complain. I'm so bored with her complaints. Yeah. But then we do the same thing, okay? So this all just keeps us totally stuck. It makes us totally stuck in our life. We can't go anywhere because we're waiting for somebody else to change. And we can't make them change. Okay? So that kind of attitude is really useless if we want to be happy. If you want to be miserable, that's a good attitude to have. But if you want to be happy, it's not a very good attitude. Doesn't work in our favor. Okay? So actually, I think the words fault and blame should just be canceled. I think we should cross those out of our vocabulary and our way of thinking. Yeah? And instead of blaming people, instead of making people at fault, whether we do make ourselves at fault or the other person at fault, we need to look and what's my responsibility, what's their responsibility. Okay? And evaluate it honestly. Sometimes we don't just complain about the other person. Sometimes we put all the blame on ourselves. Oh, we're getting divorced, the marriage isn't working, it's all my fault. I didn't do this, I did that, I'm to blame. Oh, no wonder the marriage is getting, broken up. Is that true? Are you so powerful that without your spouse doing anything, you can ruin the relationship all by yourself? No, that's not true. Okay. Whenever there's friction between people, we are not so powerful that it's all due to us. Yeah. And this whole habit that sometimes we have of blaming ourselves is an inverted form of arrogance. If I can't be the best one, I'll be the worst one. But somehow I'm special. Okay? Okay? Get into that where you just blame yourself for everything? Yeah. We do, don't we? Yeah. But that's not very realistic. We are not so powerful that all alone we can make everything go wrong. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you that you aren't so powerful. But it's true. Okay? And similarly, the other person isn't so powerful that they can make everything go wrong by themselves either. Everybody has some responsibility in the situation. So when we own what our responsibility is and admit it and clear it up and change, then things begin to change. You know, then the whole situation changes. Yeah. Because in a problematic situation, if one person changes, the whole dynamic changes. People can't continue to act the same way. And this is really true in families. Yeah. You know how in families everybody has a role? And sometimes family dinners just are a rerun of the last family dinner? Or maybe this only happens in America. You know? Okay. Okay. Sometimes in families, everybody has a different role, okay? So, you know, maybe dad criticizes the son, okay? And the son blames the sister. And the sister, you know, criticizes dad, and then mom gets mad at the sister for criticizing dad. Okay, and then another child then just finds the whole thing distressful and gets depressed and sits there like this. And then all the others get mad at that one for being depressed and sitting like that. But this is kind of the whole family dynamic. And whenever the family gets together, everybody plays out their own little role. Yeah, do you get what I mean? Yeah, is this true? Does it happen in your family? Yeah? So sometimes, you know, we've had a certain role in the family since we were little kids. And just automatically, when we're with everybody else, we just behave the same stupid way. Yeah, so you have everybody who's behaving in the same stupid way that they always do, and then wondering why there's disharmony in the family. Okay. What's very interesting is if one person in the family changes, it affects everybody else. Okay, so I was saying dad blames the son, and then the son takes it out on the sister. If the son all of a sudden stopped taking it out on the sister and smiled at his dad when his dad was blaming him, then what's going to happen? Dad's not going to be able to continue to do what he's always doing. The sister's not going to be able to continue doing what she's always doing. And then that affects the dynamic of everybody else. Okay? So it's very interesting to try that in your family. You know, don't play the same old role. Change yourself. Bring a fresh mind to the situation. Yeah? And if you change, everybody else is going to change too. At first, they won't know what in the world to do. Yeah, because everybody is very stuck in their old habit. But eventually, it really does change things. And if I can just get on a little digression here, speaking of families, is sometimes people will say to me, how can I get my family interested in Buddhism? You know, I think Buddhism is wonderful. It's helped me so much. How can I get my family interested in it? And I always say, take out the garbage. And they look at me. And I explain, okay, if you go home and with your parents, you know, and you want your parents to get interested in Buddhism, really try taking out the garbage. Your mom is going to go, wow, 40 years I've been trying to get my son to take out the garbage. And he goes to a Buddhist temple and comes home and takes out the garbage. Wow, Buddhism is fantastic. Take me to the temple with you. Okay? So seriously, you know, if you want to get your family interested in the Dharma, show your kindness to the family. Don't play the same old role you usually play. And they'll notice it. And they'll really think, oh, Buddhism is really good. Yeah. I'll tell you another story why I'm getting distracted. The one person was coming to some Dharma classes I was giving in Seattle, and she had red hair. And in the U.S., we always tease people with red hair, saying, oh, they must be very angry people. You know, kind of red is like anger. Yeah, but she was an angry person. And she also, she had lupus. So lupus is a disease, you know, degenerative disease. So she was in a wheelchair. Yeah. So at her job, because she was in the wheelchair and she often had a hot temper, they used to call her Hellfire on Wheels. Okay. So then she started coming to Dharma classes, and, you know, she realized she had a problem with anger. She started practicing these different techniques to subdue her anger. And her colleagues at work noticed the difference, and they came in and they said, what have you been doing? You know, you're not hot-tempered like you used to be. And she had a picture of the Dalai Lama in her office, and they noticed that, and she said, well, I've been going to Buddhist classes. Yeah. So, you know, if you practice, people see the difference. Yeah. Okay. What time are we? Okay. I think maybe let's do some question and answer now, and then tomorrow I'll continue with some of the antidotes to anger.
Okay. Baik, kita buka sesi tanya jawab. Seperti kemarin saya buka 3 penanya pertama. Angkat tangan dulu, nanti untuk menunggu kita. 1, 2. Di luar saya kasih kesempatan 1 kalau ada. Oke, kalau gitu ditahan dulu ya. Jadi 1, 2, 3 ya. Oke. Kalau kita dikritik kita kan nggak suka. Terus kadang-kadang saya punya teman, jadi saya kalau ngasih tahu dia dengan cara yang biasa atau ramah gitu kadang-kadang nggak mempan. Jadi saya harus kritik dia. Nah itu cara supaya ngeritiknya itu tidak nanti saya jadi kritik orang lain, jadi gak balik ke saya sendiri. Gimana caranya gitu. Terima kasih.
Okay. You know, in our monastery we've been working with something that's called nonviolent communication, and it's by somebody called Marshall Rosenberg. And it's been very, very helpful, yeah, to teach people, to teach all of us how to express what our feelings are and what our needs are, and how to make a request to people without demanding that they change. And it's been very helpful, so I would recommend this to you. In short, what you do is you try to describe to yourself what the situation is, not using any loaded words, not using any words that describe emotion or that interpret events. Okay? So you just describe it. For example, okay, one of the people in our monastery, one of the lay women who helps us, her son was getting married, and she was very mad at her daughter-in-law because when she came into the room when there was a party, the daughter-in-law didn't pay any attention to her. So she was really mad. But when she had to explain what happened without using any emotional words or interpretive words, the only thing she could say was, my daughter-in-law was sitting down talking to somebody. I came in the room, and that's it. That's all that happened. Yeah? All the rest of, she's ignoring me, she's doesn't respect me, blah, 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 blah. That's all interpretation. The bare fact was, somebody was talking to somebody else, and she walked in the room. That's all. So first of all, just, learning to describe situations to ourselves in that way is very helpful for taking the charge out of the situation. Because we realize that so often we impute motivations on other people that we don't know that they have. Okay? So that's the first step. And so with your friend, just try and describe just the bare facts, no interpretation, no emotion. Okay? And already doing that can really wake us up and make us see, oh, this isn't all coming from the other person. Okay? Then we ask ourselves, what am I feeling? And the second step, okay, to try and identify what our feelings are. Because very often, we're out of touch with our feelings. We don't know what we're feeling. Yeah? And that's why sometimes we don't even realize we're angry until, we're yelling and screaming, and then we go, oh yeah, I must be angry. But actually, the anger was building up, very slowly for a whole period of time. So we need to become more aware of what we're feeling. And one way to do this is to be more aware of what's happening with our body. I talked about this a little bit last night. Okay, so to identify what, when I have a tight feeling in my stomach, when my cheeks are flushed, I'm getting angry. Okay? So to be able to identify our emotions, that's the second one. Then the third step is to ask ourselves, what do I really need right now? Because in the case of anger, when my emotion is anger or resentment, it's due to I have a need and my need is not getting met. Okay. But when we talk about the need, we don't include the other person in the need. Okay? So it's, let's say, somebody's just carrying on and talking and creating a scene. You can't say, I need you to sit down and shut up. Yeah. That's putting the other person in it. Okay? And that's That's not what we're doing. But what is our need? I need silence right now. Okay? So instead of saying, I need you to do this and that, you keep the other person out of it, and you try and figure out, what do you need? Oh, I need silence. Or I need communication. Yeah? Or I need appreciation. Or I need respect. Okay? But we don't tie it to the other person. We just get in touch with what our need is. And this is actually a very difficult step. When we've been practicing this in our monastery, we've realized that so often we don't even understand what we need ourselves. And if we don't understand what we need, how are we supposed to communicate to the other person to ask them to help us fulfill that need if we don't even understand what we want? Okay? So this is, a very, very good exercise. It's like, well, what do I need? So in the case with your friend, what is it you're needing? Do you need cooperation? Do you need understanding? Yeah? Do you need teamwork? Do you need independence or autonomy? You have to figure out what you're needing. Okay. And then you explain that to the other person. Like, I feel angry because right now I need some autonomy to make the decision. Yeah. Or I feel angry because I need some respect. Yeah. Or I feel angry because I need what I'm doing to be acknowledged. Okay? So you don't mention the other person in it. This is very important, because you're just speaking about yourself. If we just speak about ourselves, the other person can hear it. Where the communication breaks down is when we start telling the other person about themselves. Yeah. Because if we flip the situation, do you like other people to tell you about yourself? How do we feel when other people impute motivations on us that we don't have? How do we feel when people misinterpret our actions? Okay? So we can see that in our own case, we don't like when other people talk about us. Yeah? So the best thing to do is we don't talk about the other person. We just talk about ourselves. I feel angry because I need communication. Okay? Then the other person can hear it. They can hear it. Oh, here's somebody sitting in front of me who's angry, who needs communication. Oh, that's much clearer. Now I know what I can do to help. If they need communication, then I can talk to them. Okay? So it makes it much easier for the other person to respond. Yeah? Or if we say, I'm upset because I need acknowledgement, then the other person goes, oh, this is what so-and-so needs. Now I know what the issue is about. Whereas if we just say, you never appreciate me, you're always criticizing me, you, then the other person really doesn't understand what it is we need. Okay? And usually at that point, we don't even understand what we need. So that's why, it's good to step back and really sit and think, well, what do I feel? And second, what do I need? And then when that's clear, we can ask the person to help. Asking them to help is very different from demanding that they help. if we demand something from the other person, they're not going to cooperate. So we have to make it a request, and really in our own heart, let it be a request, so that we're going to be okay if they say no. Okay? So maybe we say, you know, I'm angry because I need better communication. You know, could you, talk to me? And, I'm requesting you, please, to talk to me and explain how you're feeling. And we make that a request. And maybe the other person goes, oh, okay, I can explain to you how I'm feeling. And then they do. Or maybe they say to us, right now I really am not ready to explain how I'm feeling. I need a little bit of space. And then we respect that. Okay? So this whole thing of identifying our needs and feelings and talking about ourselves can be a very good way to communicate with other people and, get our needs met without having to get angry and trash the other person and speak in a very mean and cruel way. Okay? But it takes some time and effort on our part.
Oke, masih ada hari esok. Jangan khawatir. Pertanyaan kedua.
Selamat malam. Pertanyaan saya sebenarnya hampir sama yang tadi. Di kantor saya setiap minggu mengadakan meeting, dan manajer saya selalu meminta saya dan teman-teman kerja saya untuk mengkritik satu sama lain. Nah, menurut Anda apa yang harus saya lakukan? Memuji terus atau benar-benar mengatakan sejujurnya? Kenapa? Apakah saya harus memuji pekerjaan teman saya terus, atau saya harus mengatakan sebenarnya kalau dia memang salah atau dia memang benar?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand that your boss or your manager is asking people to criticize each other. It sounds like a communist, you know what the communists used to do to each other? Okay. What I think is better, because the same thing comes up, human beings always have differences and things. I think it's one thing that Thich Nhat Hanh does in his community when people are giving feedback is they first have to say something that they appreciate about the other person. And I think that's very important, that we say something that we appreciate about the other person. And then, instead of if you the way somebody is doing something is not fulfilling your needs, then just to say that, like let's say you're depending on somebody to turn something in on time and they're late. Rather than say, this person is chronically late, they don't get their work done, you say, I experience difficulties because I need promptness. Yeah. And you just say it like that. Yeah. Because that's telling the other person what you need and what they can do to help. But it's not blaming them. Okay? Yeah. And I would really question a manager who wants people to criticize each other. That doesn't sound to me like it's going to create a really nice work environment. Yeah? Because we've really found it at our monastery that it works much better when people are supportive of each other. You know, we can still say what we need, but somebody may say, you know, I know that what I got this to you late, and I'm really sorry, but I was just really out of sorts this week. You know? And then everybody supports that person and gives them some compassion and some empathy.
Okay, the third question.
Apabila seseorang itu gimana ya, memiliki ya bisa dikatakan energi negatif yang selalunya tuh tidak bisa membedakan kritik dan nasihat gitu. Jadi di saat dia memberikan kritik yang mungkin kita tangkapnya itu negatif, dia selalu bilang, saya tidak mengkritik, saya hanya menasihati kamu. Begitu. Jadi bagaimana caranya agar kita bisa membuat dia itu jadi gak mengkritik gitu dan lebih ke nasihat gitu. Apakah kita harus menjadi lebih positif baru bisa melakukan hal yang demikian? Karena saya tidak ingin dia mendapatkan karma yang buruk dari hasil kritikannya dia.
And then you have to ask yourself, did they ask me for advice? And do they want advice? Are they open to receiving advice? Yeah. Because if they aren't open to receiving advice, then there's no sense in giving it. Yeah. Because if somebody doesn't want advice, we may give advice, but they're going to hear it as criticism. Yeah. So sometimes you might go, you know, if there's something like this, you might say to somebody, you know, I've been noticing something, would you like some feedback? And then they might say, yes, I'm open to feedback. Or they might say, actually, no, I think I'm doing okay. Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think the whole thing about giving advice is very much a thing of timing and consideration. And then, like I said, we really have to ask ourselves, am I giving advice with a friendly attitude to help the other person? Or am I actually trying to criticize them and make it look like I'm giving friendly advice? Okay?
Oke, sesi berikutnya saya sudah mendapat satu di sisi kanan. Betul ya? Mungkin sama yang di belakang tadi ya. Maaf ya. Jadi sudah 3 ya. Saya ke samping sini dulu ya.
If blame and fault are negative actions, then are law and punishment properly needed. Then, yeah, sepatutnya diperlukan. Then what is the purpose of establishing law and punishment?
Could you just say the first part again?
If blame and fault are negative actions, then law and punishment properly needed.
Okay. Okay, so if we were to eliminate blame and fault, then what happens to law and punishment?
Yeah, then what is the purpose?
Okay. Okay, I think the purpose of law is to help establish group norms so that we can live together peacefully. In terms of punishment, I don't think punishment works when people break laws. Yeah, once in a while punishment works, but usually it doesn't. I do prison work. I go into prisons and I, you know, teach Buddhism to inmates and I correspond with inmates. So I'm quite aware of what goes on in the American prison system. And the American prison system is very geared towards punishing people. Let's make them as miserable as we can. And you know what? It doesn't work. Doesn't change people, doesn't make them into good citizens. It makes them more bitter, more resentful. It doesn't teach them any good skills. And most of these people, what they need when they go back out into society is they need life skills so they know how to, you know, balance a checkbook and get along with other people and apply for a job. And they need encouragement, and they need vocational training. And punishment doesn't give any of it. All punishment does is make that person feel worse about themselves. But most of the people who are in at least U.S. prisons already feel very badly about themselves because it was their negative self-image that got them involved in the criminal behavior to start with. Okay? And most of the people that I work with in the prisons, at the time of doing their crime, they were usually intoxicated. Okay? Sometimes on alcohol, sometimes on legal drugs, sometimes on illegal drugs. But most of the time they were intoxicated. Okay? Why do people get intoxicated? Yeah. Why do people have chronic alcohol and drug problems? Yeah. It's not because they're happy. Yeah. It's because they're unhappy. And one of the main things that they suffer from is low self-esteem and lack of self-confidence and a negative self-image. Okay. So when this negative self-image is reinforced by punishment in prison, it doesn't solve the person's problem. Yeah. Because when people don't feel good about themselves, that's, you know, you get drunk or you get high to relieve the bad feeling inside. Okay. So these people need a lot of, training and help and support, and not punishment. And I think that our legal systems and our judicial systems would work much better if they were geared towards rehabilitation rather than punishment.
Okay, mungkin last two questions ini. Still have enough time.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to address a question about criticism, but it's not about how we criticize someone, but rather it's the effect from being criticized from years to years and years. This is a problem that we as a community facing for our friend. He was raised in a family where being criticized all over again, and now we see that he always blaming himself for anything happen in his life and keep blaming other people, and other people. He's a good practitioner too. He's a good practitioner. He keep asking us our help to transform himself. He knows all of the theory, how to transform yourself. He knows exactly the theory. It was on the past and so on, but he cannot help himself to transform. But he keep asking us, help me to transform. We all see that happens because of he was raised being criticized always, and we're just wondering, then in that kind of situation, how should we help him? Thank you.
It's difficult for me to speak to your specific situation because I don't know the person. You gave me a general explanation, but I don't know the person. So I'm not guaranteeing that what I'm going to say is going to fit. Okay? So I'm just giving a very general answer here. But I found that if somebody grew up with being criticized again and again and again, then they definitely have a low self-esteem. They've internalized some of that criticism, and they feel very badly about themselves. Now, in this case, it sounds like the person studies the Dharma. They know some of the ways to practice. They're able to see intellectually that getting so down on themselves is not realistic and not productive. So, but even though they see that intellectually, they have a hard time releasing it emotionally because of the constant repetition. Yeah. So in that case, what I usually recommend is that people do a meditation where they visualize the Buddha, and they request the Buddha, please inspire my mind, please help me, in this case, to let go of this negative self-view that I have. Please, Buddha, help me to develop love and compassion. So they make a sincere request to the Buddha, and then they imagine, from the Buddha they visualize in the space in front of them, that white light comes and flows into them and completely fills their body. And they just concentrate on this white light from the Buddha, which is the nature of the Buddha's compassion, the nature of the Buddha's wisdom, filling them completely from head to toe, every single nerve, every single pore, every single cell. Okay? And they just stay with that visualization as long as they can. Really thinking, look, the Buddha is extending this incredible compassion towards me. Yeah. And I'm filled with this beautiful white light right now. And just, if he can let his mind stay in that, and does that kind of meditation gradually over a period of time, it really works to transform the mind and help purify those things. Okay?
Okay, last question from lady.
Good evening. I just want to ask one question. As an Indonesian, we prefer not to criticize each other because we like to keep it inside. We don't like to talk loud, or we don't like to talk honestly. So sometimes it's difficult for us. We prefer to hear good things than the real things. It's not the bad things, but of course it's the real thing. And it affects also in the real life for me and environment. When I talk something, people will think they like to criticism, they are very critical. Then how to deal with this in this country? How to live with this? Is always a criticism, is always have a bad image? Or is there any kind of when we do good criticism to improve people, to improve our nation? Thank you.
If there's negative karma from voicing a frank opinion, that depends on your motivation. You have to see what your intention is. If your intention is to relieve yourself of pent-up resentment, then there's anger motivating you to speak, and that's going to be negative karma. Okay? If your intention is to benefit other people, and you're trying to say something that could be helpful to them, and you have no intention to hurt their feelings, then that's fine. There's no negative karma involved in that. Okay? I think being frank is very good, but we have to learn how to be frank so that other people can understand what we're saying. Sometimes we see being frank as, I'm just going to say whatever I think at any particular moment, okay? If we do that, and what's really pushing us is, I just want to get off my chest whatever I think and whatever I feel, we're not necessarily stopping and asking ourselves, how can I best communicate what I have to say to somebody else? Because communication isn't just getting the words out of our mouth. Communication involves understanding the person that we're speaking to and seeing how we can say something to them so that they can hear it. So I think frank communication is great, and to make it effective, we have to really think about who it is we're talking about and how we can explain what we're trying to say in a polite way, in a gracious way, with examples that the other person can understand. And if you do that, and the person still thinks, you're critical or obnoxious, what to do? There's nothing to do in that case. But, if we can slow down and sometimes think about how to say something, we might find that we can be more effective. Because we often think communication is just, communication isn't just getting the words out, It's really thinking about, who are we talking to? How can I say it? How does this person think so that I can say what I want to say in a way that they can understand it? Okay?
I think finish. Hari ini selesai. Biar kita semangat, kita tepuk tangan sambil olahraga. Just to do a small exercise. Maybe you can.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll dedicate tomorrow. We'll continue, we'll dedicate today, but we'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow I want to talk about forgiveness. Yeah, and I want to talk about anger at ourselves and releasing anger at ourselves and forgiving ourselves. And also to talk a little bit about how to cultivate love and compassion. Okay, so come back for the next installment. But right now, let's take a few moments to rejoice at having spent the evening doing something really useful. And even though understanding some of these ideas can be really challenging, we really put forth our sincere effort with a good motivation. And so let's rejoice at what we did as individuals and as a group. And in fact, let's rejoice at all the goodness there is in the world, and all the goodness of all sentient beings, no matter who they are and where they live. And feeling the richness of all this merit, of all this goodness, let's dedicate it so that each and every living being can live peacefully inside of his or her own heart, so that everybody can be free of anger and be able to communicate with others with empathy, with kindness, with compassion. Let's dedicate so that we all think of benefiting each other, so that all living beings think of how to benefit each other. And let's also dedicate for our ultimate goal, everyone's full awakening. And you can think of all this merit as a light at your heart that you then shine out to and radiate to all the living beings. And as it touches them, it brings peace in their bodies and minds. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.